Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast from Florida. I've got Jesse Hamel, and he is a superstar. He's coming out from MIT Sandbox, and he's a startup founder, and he's going to talk to us all about his new venture, Victus, which has also raised some funding, and I'm really happy to have him on and pick his brain and talk about the future. Jesse, welcome.
Thanks, man. No, great to be here. I love talking about startups and founding. It's a passion of mine to talk about this. It's a great time to do this. A great country and location to do it. Lots of exciting things happen in tech and entrepreneurship. But yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And briefly, because you're a gunship aviator, and what drove you from the military into startup world and what you're doing now?
Yeah, man. So the basic story, like I grew up in a small town, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, super small town, way up on the Canadian border, losing to the Canadians in hockey. And then, went to a small business school. I was an undergrad in corporate finance 1 as a junior when 9/11 happened. And that kind of changed my trajectory. I was heading towards investment banking or probably somewhere in that area, at least in my mind. Decided to serve instead. It took about a year to get everything, paperwork and physicals and all that. Got an aviation slot with the Air Force. Thought I would just do, I don't know how many years, but not that many. Didn't really put a lot of thought into it. Just went into it, and I was excited to serve, and ended up being 20 years. So did 20 years all active duty, flew gunships, all kinds of combat operations, aviation and strike operations. Did some work in the Air Force in a program called Blue Horizons, which is a cool tech kind of program on software-defined manufacturing. So that kind of got some of that kind of thinking. Published a thesis on that. Lived in Germany for a few years. I did a bunch of things out there within SOCOM. And also I had the kind of opportunity to start something within a military context, but it was like start a brand new organization. So it had a lot of the same kind of similarities of get funding, get people, write job descriptions, this. And I really enjoyed doing that. I went from like 0 to 100 people, a pretty significant budget in about 10 months. So pretty interesting, fun stuff. Then at the end of my career, went back to the States, got requalified in gunships. Ended up commanding also an Air Force Special Operations drone squadron. So Group 1 and Group 2 drones, which are like the one size of your Group 1's about this size, Group 2 is about this size. Saw a lot of potential with that. Decided to hang it up right at 20 years, turned down War College and kind of the trajectory the career was on. Went to MIT instead, and I had this idea for founding something, but wanted to use that ecosystem to test out the hypotheses and such. And then ended up springing out a company from there out of MIT in the autonomous system space.
Yeah, interesting. And so I know because the company is still in stealth mode, so just whet our appetite what Victus is, and we'll dive into it. There's a lot of interesting questions I have for the audience.
Yeah, from an entrepreneur perspective, what we did is take, and I think this is true for other like verticals, where you have these terms become buzzwords, they start to lose their meaning in a lot of context. And autonomous systems is, I think, one of those. So what we spent some time doing is drilling it down into, we ended up doing Techstars. And what Techstars calls, I like this nomenclature, they call it the bucket 5 customer pain point. And the idea is like you apply this rigor across different buckets of find what is the customer pain point that's not just a feature, but like the K-bar knife sticking out of their rib that they throw money at for you to solve. Please solve this pain for me. That's where you have a potential to actually start a new business. So we took that time to drill down autonomy into that. And what we found was it was really about what DoD calls alternative PNT, or positioning, navigation, and timing. And that's really autonomy without GPS, without any kind of signals. That was like, there was lots of autonomy that was in the nice to have feature category. That was the one which the market was not solving. And then the other, I think a good entrepreneur does that piece of it, drill down to what the bucket 5 is. And then the other part is being, okay, what are other people doing to solve this? And do I actually have something to add that's different? In our case, what we found is about 95% of the people and organizations, the companies within national security and the commercial space, they were looking at some kind of like very expensive hardware solution. So something like magnetometers or atomic clocks or quantum IMUs, laser comm with low Earth orbit satellites, all of which have some technical validity. They also would all take a $2,000 drone and turn it into a $50,000 drone every time. Not really scalable, both for national security or in a commercial space at all. So what we said, okay, now we see a pain point that's not really adequately being addressed. So we developed a software kind of AI solution where you don't need additional hardware changes, but utilize our machine learning and agentic goal setting, and then build on something that's totally modular so it can integrate with any system and allow it to operate in these no signal environments. That was the key takeaway. But that process is how we went, that process of determining what that kind of bucket 5 pain point is, determining what the market's doing, then assessing from a bottom up TAM approach, like what that market could be, and then how we could uniquely solve it with a novel kind of solution. That's the process we went through at MIT to launch out of there.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I love these incubators like MIT or all these founders like Techstars as well. So a follow-up question I have for you is, because I've been listening to I used to not listen to politics but now there's a lot of things that the current administration is focused on. And one of those I heard from the defense secretary was this idea where drone warfare and AI and autonomous systems are becoming where a lot of countries are focused on that, because this kinetic warfare where you're sending troops or tanks or things like that, are becoming less because there's more efficient ways. So educate the audience on drone warfare and its potentials and its implications.
Yeah, it's a great thread. A couple ways to think about this. I think 2022, around 2022 through even where we are now in Crimea and the Donbass region was kind of very educational. So I think it showed the power of drones. Like, it showed the power of drones to really tip the balance. If you think about a country of Ukraine, a small agriculture-based country that largely quickly self-educated, had some allies and part of help, but they, out of necessity, educated on what drones could do against a much larger, more established like Russian Federation. And at the very least was able to achieve a stalemate against a much better funded and better equipped adversary. Drone was a part of that, for sure. Like, the power of drones is a part of that. So what does that mean for warfare? I think it actually is even broader than warfare. I think it actually goes to, what does it mean for national security? What does it mean for different economies? And the question, the way I phrase it, is what drones have showed is that every person and entity can have their own Air Force. What does that mean? In a world where anybody can have their own Air Force, it used to be very hard to obtain this, right? Yeah. Very expensive to get pilot license, very expensive to get runways. Aircrafts are very expensive. Really only large businesses and nation states and the wealthy can afford them. But now all of a sudden everybody can. And that changes, I think, the way we think about it. So really it's a many thing. What also happened then is with the invention of transformers, with the invention of kind of agentic problem solving within AI. Now it's not just everyone can have their own Air Force, or their own kind of airplane. It's a human can even be interacting with thousands of these at once. So what drones represent is like a hyper leveraged warfighter. And that, I think, it's a powerful unlock when you think about this. So that's why I think there's a very good reason that the US and the allies and other partners are really taking this seriously about how we have low cost, affordable, but high number of autonomous drones and units within national security. Like, how do we do that? The tech has changed. It's changed kind of the character of war. In the Civil War kind of era, the invention of the Gatling gun changed a lot of things. The invention of the first airplane between World War I and World War II. In fact, you could argue in some cases that's what stopped World War I. The invention of fission and the Manhattan Project dramatically changed the end of World War II. So these big tech changes, they usher in entirely new epochs of how you do national security and how you think about both deterrence and compellence within the geopolitical spectrum. War being just to use Clausewitzian terms, just a continuation of politics by another means. It changes that balance. I think autonomous drones are another equal to the Manhattan Project, equal to the invention of gunpowder. It's the same kind of level, and it's forcing a complete rethink of how we do everything.
Yeah, it reminds me, because when you mentioned that now everybody can own their own Air Force, it's almost like social media, where before you had like the big media companies, but now everybody is their own independent channel.
Yes,
so.
People maybe overuse this term, but I don't think it's wrong. Like, democratized air, I don't think that's necessarily wrong, because it is that, or definitely decentralized. Smaller nodes are able to be much more powerful with this kind of technology. This is both a promise and a peril in a way for the West. And I'll say it that way to say that this drones are also, and our adversaries are noticing this, drones are also a key towards quickly elevating your national security power. So maybe you can't afford the next generation fighter or F-35s or Columbia class submarines. Those are quite expensive. If you can afford a couple 100,000 drones, maybe all of a sudden you have the same kind of capability for deterrence, for holding targets at risk. And then that gives you that changes the power balance. So I actually very much supportive of two kind of parallel, like two sides of the coin efforts here. One being the massive development investment in autonomous systems. I think that's a national imperative. We have to do that within national security. And that's part of why I funded the company to support that. The other side of it, I think we're calling it the Golden Dome now. This is early kind of efforts, but this idea of protecting the homeland from this kind of threat, it's equally as important too. And I actually think that even like the New Jersey drone situation that we had over a couple months ago was a wake up call to even like local law enforcement.
Yeah.
That even like the security of your house, like the security of your house. If you put up a fence and have some cameras on a 2-dimensional place, if a drone were to fly over your house, like that doesn't matter anymore. Like security is a 3-dimensional concept now. And I think this is actually law enforcement at the county, at the city, at the state level really need to be rethinking how we do this. It's not good enough. Like what happened in a lot of New Jersey situations, honestly, it was not good enough. Where you had local officials shrug their shoulder and say, I don't know what's going on. That's not good enough anymore. That's not good enough. So being able to both use that kind of technology and defend against it and keep security against that I think is it's both a massive opportunity, but it's also a great like challenge of this era. And then I juxtapose that with kind of a core conviction that we have as well. And I think for several different reasons this is true, but I believe very firmly that from 2025 to 2035 is the decade of robotics. Because to me, drones are just a flying robot. That's really all they are. And the things that we've talked about since the structure of scientific revolutions, Thomas Kuhn kind of area, like it's actually being materialized now. Humanoid will be here within 10 years, like very commonplace. Like drones and autonomous systems in orbit, in airspace, on land and maritime, subsurface environment, in your home, on our roads, on our trains, in our schools. That's coming. And there's great potential there as well for doing this. It's also very important that we have strong like American leadership in this for both economic reasons and national security reasons. So investing in this area and leading in this is, I think, is really important.
Yeah, said. And because you touched on the application, not just in military, both offense and defense, but a lot of the military projects like the internet or even AI, these were funded for defense, but then they went mainstream and into our everyday. And talk about this idea of drones in terms of Amazon using drones for delivery now, or flying air taxis. How are you positioning your startup to capture some of that market share as well in those applications?
Yeah, great question. One, I absolutely use the term dual use, but absolutely use a dual use strategy. And I agree with you. I actually think by 2035, the commercial markets for this tech will be bigger than defense. So I agree with you. 100% agree with that. And a couple of things we're seeing. So what we're doing right now is we're pursuing both simultaneously. So we're pursuing a B2G line, as in direct business to the government, but then putting as much energy into a B2B line. And a couple kind of examples, agriculture. So agriculture is massively transitioning towards autonomous systems right now. And they need no signal, very reliable systems, both for autonomous tractors as well as like drones. We have drones that are shooting lasers at weeds now. They spray biologics. They do a lot of the harvesting work. And there's actually tremendous like gains for food and reduction in food prices that are gained with this. The energy sector and energy infrastructure is another really exciting one for autonomous systems. Where it comes to like grid inspections, power line inspections, new power plant inspections themselves, kind of grid maintenance, grid security, all things that are performed much, much better with autonomous systems. And then a lot of it looks like, whether it's disaster response or just steady state response, it looks like a better utilization of very limited human resources. So if the human resources are able to have a better idea of what's happening, like in critical areas, and then we can send a lineman, for example, in energy that knows where to go to repair a power line and already shows up on scene with pictures, images, and a full video of what needs to be done. So they bring the right tools with them, make one trip, and it's fixed. That's a 10x kind of improvement in efficiency. I think that's happening across all kinds of different verticals. Insurance, we've had discussions with people with insurance, construction. I have a colleague out of MIT who's just started his own organ transplant company with a surgeon that is transporting human organs. You can do it much faster, and it actually extends the kind of, they call it the golden hour, right? As you're transporting human organs for a live transplant. And it translates into actual humans' lives being saved by doing this. All commercial verticals, I think, are really exciting.
Yeah, really fascinating. And I really enjoyed the talk. And a lot of the audience, they are VC and angel investors. And if they wanted to connect with you and learn more about Victus and the work that you're doing, how can they connect with you and contact you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. If you just look at my name, Jesse, Jesse Hamel. Our website's under construction right now for stealth, but you can put data in there. Get Victus AI. There's an intake there where we get the emails, and definitely reach out there. Lots of folks within the Techstars and other VC networks are aware of us as well. So using those networks usually works well.
Yeah, excellent. Really interesting. And I love talking to startup founders, and keep up the great work.